Hello, everyone. Uh, Nice to see you. We still give you some time to join us live. I'm here today with Gleb Bahmutov, the legend, one and only. And for today's stream, I brought a special shirt. Look at that. You probably have people going around with that in your town a lot, right?
Yeah. Yes, but hi everyone. Philip, it's not cool to wear Harvard merch.
I know it's cool
It's
here.
cool to
It's
wear a
cool here.
house. Yeah. Basically, at Harvard, everyone has this like houses. It's almost like Hogwarts. Like nobody wears Hogwarts gear. They all will wear like Gryffindor gear, right?
Yeah,
So, but
yeah.
it's okay.
I know
Who
it's
cares?
super uncool, but when I was in Boston when I came to visit you last
Yeah.
year, I needed a souvenir, and I was walking around Harvard, and people were wearing these cool hoodies,
Yeah.
and there was a shop at every corner. So I thought, hey,
Yes.
I'm going to buy myself a hoodie. No one will know about that in here in Slovakia, or like will not think that I came from Harvard. Or if they do, whatever. But
That's
yeah,
You are right. You're right. It's there's a shop on every corner selling all this like merch.
exactly. Yeah, so welcome, Web. It's so nice having you today on this stream. So you've been
Uh-huh.
streaming actually too, right? Back in a long time ago, was it?
Well,
Will you do your own
here's the
streams
thing.
again?
No,
No,
no.
okay. No streams from Gleb.
So I found that the way I stream like on Twitch was very unproductive, right? Um, Unfortunately. Um, so I decided, okay, I'm just going to record videos that are super short, super focused, and just put them out. And it takes much shorter amount of time compared to streaming, right?
Yep.
Plus, the day job doesn't allow me to like stream. I have distractions, right? So
Yeah,
I usually like,
it takes a little time, so, but I'm happy you found time today. Um,
yeah,
so
anytime.
so yeah, you were actually teasing today on social media that you are going to show us something amazing. Uh, and I were
Yeah,
already peeked into it, and I think it's kind of cool.
yeah,
As you all know, Gleb is master of plugins, and probably
I have a
half of
whole
the
course
plugins that
about
are
it.
out there are yours, by the way. But the recent one is pretty cool one. So should we show that?
Yes, you're right. I do have a lot of plugins. You can find them all probably linked from my personal site and also described in the blog post, right?
Hmm.
I also have a course about plugins, but do not take that course. It's for advanced users of Cypress, so just don't.
Well, what do you think the audience is like? These are all advanced Cypress users, so they can take
That,
it.
that's probably true. The
By the
people who
way,
watch you, yeah,
By the
yes,
way,
please.
this is like such a flex if you just build your own course about your own plugins. Like, I always
I
looked up to
yeah,
you, but I'm like nowhere near that because I have one. So,
it's a good plugin though, right? I do like it myself.
well, it was
The plugin
inspired by
fix.
yours anyway. So,
I
so thanks for the
but I do like
inspiration.
Philip. You did name it Cypress plugin, right? Which is um
I
kind of
think I saw somewhere in the documentation that that is like the convention, which doesn't seem anyone follows. So I thought
yeah.
like I'm not going to name it CYAPI because the name is taken anyway.
I, yes, at some point when I worked there, there was like, oh, we have to clean up the plugin name, so everything has to start with Cypress dash, let's say the area like plugin, Cypress dash preprocessor. But then it sounds very weird, right?
Hmm.
Cypress preprocessor dash webpack, right? No, like you want to say webpack preprocessor. You don't want to say right, and then because of npm namespaces and scopes, right? You have at Cypress. So why would you have another Cypress, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's sort of I think it was modern at that time, right? Because Gatsby was all the rave, and they had that convention. Like at least that's where I saw it quite prominently. That if you create a Gatsby plugin, you should
yeah.
name it Gatsby plugin, whatever.
But you know why they do that, right? So a lot of these tools, right? They need to load a lot of plugins and they don't want you to configure everything. So
Hmm.
sometimes they just look for your package JSON and look at through your dependencies and they say, okay, we have to load everything that starts with like Gatsby dash plugin,
Hmm.
right? By default. So they use the naming scheme to know what to preload at least,
Hmm.
right? And other tools like Grant and Gulp used to do that, I believe, as well. So maybe, but basically that never works, right? The default configuration usually doesn't work. You want to be explicit and put it in your config file and not just let the tool like, oh, just blindly load everything and
Yeah.
hope it all kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah,
that was my rant.
let's take a look at your latest and greatest now.
Okay, can you share my browser, right?
Yeah,
Because
I'm sharing it so people can see that. Maybe you can
oh,
make it a slightly zoomed in if you can, so it's readable for people.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I think
So
that's
I
better.
zoomed in a little bit more. Okay, so here's the situation. Long time ago, I was,
In a galaxy far,
not
far
sleeping
away.
at night, right? Yes. And um, at that point, we were trying to figure out at Cypress, what to sell to people, right?
Hmm.
Because not everyone likes to donate money to companies. Some people want to buy something from companies.
Hmm.
And there was the dashboard, and at that point, there was not even the paywall. You just paid like a fee yourself, right? Like sign up.
Hmm.
And you store artifacts like video screenshots, test results. And how much can that cost, right? Like static artifact storage. So the company was worried that if they open source test runner, they need something else to make people want to buy some, dashboard. And so sitting around playing with Mocha, and I love Mocha test runner,
Hmm.
right? It's just simple, works, right? And I was like, okay, how cool would be if Mocha, for example, took your tests in your file and then just like randomize the order every time you run it, the test run. So you figure out either a test dependencies.
Hmm.
Okay, so I created a tool around Mocha and I called it random Mocha, like Roca. Then, another thing, imagine you have Mocha and you run the test, but then you want to rerun the failed test right away, just the
Hmm.
failed ones, right? And skip, right? So I create another tool. And then I decided, okay, how would you speed up Mocha, right? Well, you would keep it open, right? Instead of if you want to run the test, you would like run Mocha, it would start and imagine if it takes time, right? And it would pre-process the spec file and then it runs and then it closes and then you have to start again.
Hmm.
And in Cypress, it was a very big obstacle, right? Because it would, you know, open, takes time, runs, bundles, closes, right? You pay this penalty. So it's different from a watch mode, right? In a watch mode, you watch a specific file and you're running and you just rerun the spec, but it's not what we need, right? In
Hmm.
our case, I just want the tool to sit there waiting. And when you just send the spec, say, run the spec. And when you're done, ask me for the next spec. And if I have any more specs, I'll give it to you.
Hmm.
Because what happens then, you can spin several test runners and then they all come to you saying, hey, I'm available. And you can say, okay, I have 10 specs. You take 1, 2, 3. And when you're done, whoever's first done, right, can come and I'll give a spec 4, then 5, and so on until we all run out. And once we're done, then you can all exit.
Hmm.
So that's how Cypress parallelization was born. The dashboard already provides an API, right? So it was easy to connect and put the paywall. Okay, So that was then. That pays the bills for Cypress, good for them. But now, and I have some examples of how to do it easily,
And
right?
can I ask? Maybe
Yeah.
I'm like jumping ahead, but when I tried this plugin already, and I was kind of curious how that works. Like you explained the Mocha system and how you can
Yeah.
sort of feed it one spec after the other. But if you run it on like GitHub Actions where you have
Yeah.
parallel jobs, those three machines like they run on different. Like if I
Containers.
were
Yeah.
imagine them in a space, like they would run in different rooms. So how does the
Yeah.
communication between those rooms happen? Because I always thought about dashboard like you need to have it, right? Because there needs to be a server
Yeah.
which you can communicate with, but this doesn't seem to have a server to communicate with. So what's going on here? If I'm not asking the question too early.
No, that's fine. It's like the Matrix, right? In the Matrix, you had to understand a simple thing. There was no spoon. With my plugin, there is like you have to understand there is no communication between the test runners. Okay, they run in separate rooms, and they all just take a part of a job. Okay, when you send the test runners in their rooms, right, you know how many rooms you have, right, and you know how many test files you have. And when you send the first test runner in the first out of 3 rooms, you say, I have a list of 10 files. Here are 4 files, right, for you. Here's the list. You do them. Okay?
Okay.
Second person in the second room, the second test runner, you say, okay, this person first took the first 4, so you take the next 3 specs and go finish them, right? So instead of dynamic, execute one thing at a time, communicate with dashboard API, receive the next spec to run. Here it's all static. Okay, so I do have a plugin. Well, it's not really a plugin. It's like a standalone thing, like a little utility called Find Cypress Specs. You can look it up, right? I use it all the time, right? You can see there are like 146 commits. So this one, if you just run it in your Cypress project, all versions of Cypress, looks at your config file, looks at spec pattern, and tells you, hey, these are the spec files that you will run, right? If you ran this, okay? And this supports all sorts of, little crazy things like finds tags, finds specs that change against a different branch, right? So if you're like running on a pull request, you can like figure out the change specs files, okay? So in my plugin, I take advantage of Find Cypress specs to actually give me all the specs to run before we start running.
So
And then the
before,
test runner,
okay, so before you start the test run, this plugin is called basically maps out all the spec files
yeah,
and basically divides them in
yes.
between the machines. All right,
And even better, Philip, we can
all
go
right.
one step beyond.
I'm ready to be amazed. Come on.
You don't need a separate first step to divide, like figure out the specs and we divide and tell each test runner what to do. Each test runner, when it starts running, finds all the test files, right? Using find Cypress specs inside plugin, looks at the environment variables,
Oh,
and then it's like,
nice.
oh, I'm test runner 1 out of 3. I'll grab the
All
first
right.
4 spec files. It's all static, and it's each test runner, each machine just figures out on itself. They all start with the same, input parameters, but then each one's like, oh, I'm 1 out of 3. I'm
All
2 out
right.
of 3. I'm 3 out of 3. So
All right, all right.
uh,
Now I understand because I thought like, what kind of black magic is this? And it's sort of like with all magic tricks. Once you know what's
yeah,
behind that, it's like, of
yeah,
course, yeah.
yeah. It's all very simple, right?
All
And
right.
basically this is true, right? There was a lot of complaints. How come Cypress is charging for the dashboard, right? I understand. Um, you also have to understand that the dashboard pays for the test runner. Now, I figured out I already paid my dues for developing the test runner and its ecosystem and the documentation and everything. So I deserve to use the test runner as much as you want. If Cypress, the company, right,
All right.
disappears tomorrow, okay, I promise you, I'll just fork the repo, and you will not even notice. Okay, I'll continue developing Cypress the test runner. Boom, probably will be better,
All
right?
right.
So I paid my dues. So you and I and everyone else deserves the test for free because you're not using Cypress infrastructure. So I wanted a plugin that would look at the spec files and says I'm first out of 3 runners. Okay, so this is how it looks for GitHub Actions, for example. You can say, okay, just split it up. I have a couple of examples for every, modern test runner. Someone just opened a PR to show an example for Jenkins. Basically, it will work on any CI as long as every machine knows, which machine it is,
Which
like the
number
index,
it has? Yeah.
and how many machines there are, right? How to divide things. And the way I would use this, so let's just look at the plugin itself because I will demonstrate it in action. So for every plugin, I try to keep the README, right, up to date. So this is the most important thing. It says chunk 1 out of 3,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so why don't we try using this live? Okay.
Yeah,
Are you
let's
with me?
do that. Yeah, I'm with you. I just read a question because that find specs utility you just shown, I think it sparked inspiration in one of the users, and he or she, I don't know, is asking whether it is possible to, I guess, not sure if with this plugin or with some other plugin to sort of generate automated documentation from Cypress specs. Which I think is just taking the idea you have to another level where you just sort of parse. I don't know what you do in the background, if you parse the contents of the files or just like the file names. You do the contents of the files, right? And if you could like take the output of that and then do something with that. And I think I've seen this in the past where the tests would not only be they would not only have the role of testing the application, but they would sort of be a product of its own, where the result of the tests would actually generate something. I think you played with that as well, right? With the Cypress Video plugin.
Yeah, Cypress Movie, Cypress Video.
Cypress Movie, yeah.
So find Cypress specs. It looks at your config file, tries to figure out the spec pattern, try to find glob the actual files, gives you the list, but then it also looks inside, and I have find test names npm module to actually go inside the source, parse it, give you like the suits, the tests, like as a big tree, the tags, like all the information about that. You could probably get your comments. I'm using it right now. We're trying to build a tool at Mercari US that would give us all the skip tests and give a comment above the test, because usually we put the Jira link, right, if we skip a test, so we don't forget about it. So like you can generate reports about all the skip tests and tell you why it was skipped, so you can go and verify and like assign it to someone so you don't forget it. So yeah, you can build a tool.
I was curious about that too, because I've been working on this sort of Cypress Steps plugin, which was like a custom command log that would like number your CY logs, and then if there's an error, it would print out the scenario that it is trying to do, and then it could potentially solve the problem of like giving visibility of what is tested to some stakeholder. And I thought about trying to do something with this plugin and try to see if I can sort of add something. Just find me all all commands that start
Yeah.
with cy step or something like that.
So absolutely. Um, I started looking at how I can have a dashboard better than Cypress dashboard because I'm so unhappy.
All right.
I've been using it heavily for a year and a half at Mercari, right? We run 700 tests like every day, multiple times a day across the entire organization, bunch of developers, bunch of QAs, and trying to figure out, here's a spec. Let's figure out its history. What are the tests? Where are we going, right? Do we have more failures? Have we seen this failure? It's like the dashboard, like even sitting around, if you have a couple specs, and let's say I use my SciGrep plugin and I burn the tests that are new to make sure they're not flaky. Like if you have 10 tests in a spec file, just waiting for 10 minutes for that one spec file, because Cypress did not realize that, I want to see results right away, right? At least maybe for tests, maybe per command, right? And instead I have to wait 10 minutes and then see, oh, wait, the first one failed, so, right? Like I want to create a better dashboard for myself and for everyone else. That's why Cypress split. This is why I look at Mocha Awesome reporters. I will be looking at the terminal reporters, right, next, right? So I can give you a result of each command, all sorts of crazy things.
These are some like valuable insights. I'm wondering if there was a way. Oops, sorry. If there was a way to improve on the current experience. Like, what do you think is like the number one missing feature from that?
Okay, so there are
Like,
lots of things that I
yeah,
think
like you
are wrong
mentioned, a
and could
couple
be
of those,
improved.
right?
Yeah. Yes, but like trying to understand why the task has failed and how it failed before and what's the expected behavior, right, for each step, so kind of backtrace it and even manually to compare and say, okay, this is how it looks right now. I'm not sure if that's how it looks when, well, what do you do now? Well, you have to find the test that passed. Yeah, don't even get me started. Open it a different tab, play the video until it's approximately the same, and then you're like, but then you have no information about any of the network calls that you see. There are no breadcrumbs of information right through the task, like your steps, nothing. It's ridiculous. Like I my son who is 11 could probably write a better dashboard. It's ridiculous.
Oh wow,
Nah,
strong
I'm just
statements
kidding.
here.
I'm just kidding.
I know.
He-
I kind of feel the frustration with that, and I mean, I agree to a point. Like there definitely could be some improvements there. I was thinking about as you were saying about the debugging. There was an interesting project just recently. I believe it came out, if it's not like still in beta. But Replay.io, have you played
yeah.
with that? Like they have quite interesting thing going
No,
on. Basically, they have their
Philip.
own browser,
Yeah.
and it logs like all kinds of activity in the background, and then you can go and debug. And I thought like, wow, that's something that dashboard should have, because it's like amazing. You can take a look into so much details here.
Okay, I will tell you what, Philip. I have
Tell me.
not played with it. I replayed with it. Ah, see
Ah,
what I
okay,
did?
nice.
Well, like again, I no longer work at company, so I can like whatever. At the company, long time ago at SRGS conference in 2018, I showed a presentation where I said, okay, the two things that I want to do, right, is component testing. Here's how it works. I already have like all the Cypress React unit tests and all these utilities. And like, this is how it would work, right? And then I want to see the dashboard that records everything, and so you can actually understand the failure immediately, right? That was in 2018, right? So my component testing is now production, right? And what else Cypress is pushing now as a company? API testing, right? Something that I started and wrote a blog post many years ago saying, hey, Cypress is great because it can give you UI for your tests, so you can make calls and see what API does, like, other tools, but better, right? So now Cypress is pushing for component testing, and for API testing. I was like, oh, well, I guess, good for you, right? And you never could implement anything about the dashboard that's meaningful, right? So
this is your way of pushing them to improve on the dashboard?
I,
Do I
I, don't, I don't
understand that
care.
correctly?
I don't care. Like if they do it, okay, that will not benefit me in any way. If they fail, I don't care. If I do it, everyone will benefit, right? You, me, everyone watching this, everyone will be like, yes, this is helpful, this is good. Let my reputation and my previous work speak for it, right? If chances are high. We'll see, right? I just started looking. I promise you that this year, I will show everyone how to get the same thing as Cypress dashboard, but for free, right? Well, you'll have to host it somewhere, right? And do static results or do something, right? And maybe I'll show something that goes way beyond what we are used to, like, oh, look at test results and try to figure out why it fails by running it locally, which is what Cypress debug tab does right now, which is, well, we better have some big plans for the tab, because right now it's like, yeah, I don't want to rerun the tests. I cannot rerun the tests exactly the same way. So what are we even talking about? Okay, let's
All right,
see
let's
Cypress split
get
in
back
action,
to
right?
the
Right?
to
Okay.
the tab. Yeah.
And one other thing, you will see how I scaffold new Cypress projects, right, from the terminal. Okay, so we need to make a folder. So let's say Philip, right, 1, because you're number 1, right? And we have to initialize the Git, and we have to initialize npm package right away. So we're going to install Cypress, and we're going to install Prettier, and we're going to install Cypress split.
All right.
Every time I say Cypress split, I think of like Split in Croatia, which I really liked as a city.
You were there on a conference, right?
Oh yeah, a couple
the
of years ago.
InfoBip
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah. I wish they invited me again. They never invited me again.
They didn't.
Okay. So
It's I think they're going to have call for papers open soon.
I don't do calls for papers because they
No?
always reject me nowadays. Okay. Dear conference organizers, I understand that you receive a lot of proposals. I was one of those people who sent like 10 proposals per conference, and then 1 or 2 would be accepted, and I would be happy. But I understand that spamming everyone with the same proposals is not a good thing. So I now pick one good one, and I write it from scratch, and I send it, and I get rejected again and again. Like this year, I've been rejected from pretty much everywhere, right? Where I applied.
Yeah, me too.
Except for local conferences. So, but I love local conferences. I'm going to Montreal this month to Confu, so catch me there. And I'm going to Nerd Summit, which is local Massachusetts conference in March. I love local events, Okay, so what do we have here? We have node modules, we have prettier settings, right? And nothing else. We did install Cypress. And now I'm gonna show a trick. So I need just simplest, kind of bare Cypress config. So I have my own CLI utility, which again, I think it should be part of Cypress. npx Cypress init, right?
Like
but
create React app and sort of create Cypress project. Yeah, I have that utility too. I built my own actually.
Yeah.
Because I tested yours and it didn't have all the things I wanted. So
it's very simple, right? So in this case, it created Cypress config for us, Cypress folder. Okay, and so let's look at Cypress config. Standard, no support file, no fixtures files, right? Because like, why if we don't need them?
Yep.
And Cypress, most important, it adds a README actually showing, like what's there, and just standard test. We don't need any of this. Actually, we don't. Let's skip it. Okay, so it works, and I'm just gonna say wait, because it's my favorite command. We're gonna wait 10 seconds, right? That's it. Good enough. Ignore node modules. Never commit node modules to GitHub unless you have very good reason.
What's that
And I'm gonna
ignore command? Because I know the git ignore. Like you create a file, but you made that through CLI. Like I never did that. I think.
okay. So first of all, like my G is
Hmm.
a alias to Git, right? So I don't.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, Git is such a long word, almost as long as
Yeah,
Gleb. That's why people call me G for short. St is alias for status, right? So git ignore actually creates that git ignore file if it's not there.
yeah. All right.
And so
Okay.
git ignore modules just creates
Nice.
a
Nice
file, right?
shortcut.
So
Yeah.
just wait.
Yeah. I'm
Okay,
I'm ready to be amazed, Gleb.
so we're gonna copy spec to like spec A and maybe spec B. So we have a bunch of specs, right? Because that's how we simulate like lots of A, B, C, D, let's say E, and we'll move spec to, let's say, last one, right? Okay, so what do we have? I'm gonna add everything that I have that's not get ignored, and now I have all the files prepared,
Hmm.
right? And I have a shortcut to git commit dash m, and I just have to give message initial. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to GitHub, and I'm gonna create a new repo so we can push the code and use GitHub Actions. I love GitHub Actions because I don't have to fight security or anything, right? Okay,
Yeah. If your
so
company already uses GitHub, then the door is open.
dude, I'm paying for GitHub Pro myself. It's $4 a month.
Uh huh.
I think it's the best investment
What
for a developer.
what does Pro give you? Because I'm not paying for that. Like the minute they have made private
I don't
repositories
remember.
available even for like a free tier, I thought like, all right, that's good enough. Don't need anything else.
Thing was something about private repos because at some point GitLab allowed you to have private repos for
Mm-hmm.
free and GitHub did not. That's how I started paying, I think. Okay,
All right.
so I'm gonna push and I'm using dash U because I want to set that remote as like default origin so I don't have to specify. So we have those tests, right? And unfortunately, if we run the test now, right, it's gonna be slow. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do, 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 right?
Wait for
Six,
10 seconds.
six,
Yeah.
right? 1 minute. I mean, who has 1 minute? Like, certainly not me. Okay. You don't have to take my Cypress plugins course if you don't want to, right? You don't have to, right? Here's a trick or a tip or a secret. Because I have very bad memory myself, if I don't write something down, I forget. Like that's why all my readmes, I literally like when I like install something, I don't like, oh, here's how I do it. I
Mm-hmm.
literally go to readme and I like, can I copy? Is this correct? And if it's not correct and doesn't work in my project, when I go and fix it, because I know I need it. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna do this and we're gonna go back to our config file and we're gonna import. And by the way, see, this is another trick that I suggest. If you write something like your plugin, in your code examples, right, add a link to whatever you want, right, some documentation.
Mm-hmm.
So people can copy paste, and then anyone who looks like, especially on a team, looks and like, what is Cypress split, right? They can just click on a link and
Yeah.
find out, right? Even yourself, right? Like it's so much simpler. Okay,
Yeah, I heard somebody say about the documentation and putting notes in the code is some an interesting sentence about that. Like, I'm not putting it to remember it later. I'm putting it down to remember it now. So, so like, find it now. Yeah.
okay. So one other thing, look, important, return the config object. So I'll explain why, okay, in a second. Okay, I think this is it. I think we only have to do it in the config object, because
Mm-hmm.
we need to decide or filter specs before we actually start running them. Once
Yeah.
Cypress starts running, like that's it. Like we don't care. So there are no commands, no custom commands, nothing for the
Mm-hmm.
support file, nothing for the spec. Okay. So here's in GitHub Actions. All right. Actually, let me go to here. So this explains how you use it from Docker, from Jenkins, from any CI. If you have 3 machines, you have to start them all with the same things and just tell each machine, hey, there are 3 of you, and you are index 0, 1, 2, and so on. Okay. Finally, the second biggest tip that you should know about my plugins is that they are all debugged in the same way, right? So for debugging, I use this module called debug, and in everywhere, and it's used in Cypress itself. So the same applies to Cypress. So it looks like this in my code. Let's say index this line. Okay. So debug is like a console log, but it's only like hidden by default. And to turn it on, you have to pass the right string as environment variable. So in all of my plugins, there is debugging, which just says, okay, you just have to set your operating system debug variable. Okay. So
All right.
let's set it, and then we'll see exactly how this plugin works. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and in
right
the
now,
in the source code, is there anything you need to add to the Cypress split plugin itself? Like, do you have some sort of
no,
checkpoints that need to be debugged, or does it like
no,
generate
you will see in a
automatically
second.
whatever? All right,
You
I'm
will see in a
I'm
second.
really
So right
curious.
now we
Yeah.
just installed it, right? We just added it to our config. We said, okay, required to load. And then when you set up node events, so this runs when you load the project the very first time. Okay. This is your chance to actually change the config file of Cypress's like own config. And then you return it. So Cypress uses the settings that you modified. And this is what exactly the plugin does. Okay. And now we will see it by using debug.
All right.
Okay. So let's say we do nothing, right? We just run it normally like before. And I'm going to kill it before it starts running. But okay. So by default, Cypress split does nothing, right? Because it doesn't know if you're running in parallel. So it
Yeah.
says, yeah, like, okay. And that's why we're still running all the specs. But let's say we do the same thing and we said, okay, you are my friend. So let me do it differently. Still debugging, but now, right, we say, okay, let's split it. We have 6 specs, let's say 2 ways, and this is the first machine. Okay, let's see what happens now. Ooh, okay. So now things are happening. The plugin looked at the process environment variables and said, oh, I found the split, and I found split index, and they both make sense. And then I found 6 specs, and I am, 0 out of 2 machines. Okay, so I will chunk it up, and I will only execute the first 3 specs, half of 6.
Yeah.
Okay, and look what it's doing. It's setting the spec pattern. Okay, what is the
So
spec
it
pattern?
adds it like into the config, right? Yeah.
Literally, this is the same thing as if you done manually it yourself and you said Cypress E2E last site.js, and then spec A, spec, like this is exactly the same thing, but you have to return it. Otherwise, Cypress will not know what you meant, right? This is what plugin does. That's it. Like
That's
that's the whole.
easy enough, and you can set it up yourself, right? You can. So by default, Cypress Split plugin will just split it into whatever, how many number of groups you want.
Yeah.
But you can do the load balancing yourself, right?
Yes. So here's one thing where it's different from Cypress dashboard. Cypress dashboard uses the timings, the historical timings of each spec, and it knows like how long. I forgot if I'm saying it, but here, but basically it looks at the historical how long each spec
Yeah.
takes to first put the longest running specs and then the shorter one, so you don't end up with one machine running super long specs at the end because it didn't know about
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But this plugin doesn't know about it, but I don't see why you could not implement something easy like a little service. Or it's so simple, you can probably cache timing information on each CI and then load
Oh,
it
that's
before you run this
interesting
plugin.
idea.
Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
let's see how it goes. Okay, so we added it to the config, but we also need to see how to run it on CI. Okay, so this is GitHub Actions. Notice that you need to say I'm running 3 containers, and on each container you run the same Cypress GitHub action that will install everything, cache everything, but you have to tell each machine, each container, hey, you are running in so many machines, and unfortunately there are no environment variables, but you can get those things from GitHub Actions. Philip.
Yeah.
This is complicated, right?
Do you have a solution? I know
forget.
you have a solution for this.
Exactly. So if you're running them on GitHub, using GitHub Actions, then you will love, actually, even if you run, using Cypress in any way, right? Using GitHub, you must use Cypress workflows. Okay, so GitHub Action is a piece of reusable steps, right, that GitHub allows you to use. Cypress workflows is a reusable workflow, like the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So I have only 3 workflows. This is the full workflow for like running on one machine, right? That's it, one line. Just say, and this does the defaults, right? Check out the code, use Cypress GitHub Action to run everything.
Yeah.
And you can add with parameters just like you can with actions. If you want to record, same thing. Okay.
And how do you create that workflow? So it's like a Git repository. I don't see the URL you have in your
No,
browser.
like right here, right? So this is a URL. It could be your local workflow in your local repo,
okay.
or a public GitHub repository, and then this is path.
Oh, right? Yeah, so it just like points to a file in your repository.
Here,
So you have a Cypress workflow repository. Oh, okay, yeah, I see now.
Okay, so why don't we create this folder in our project? So create a flow, add YAML. Okay, and where is our split example? Right here. How many machines do we want to use, Philip? It's up
all
to
of
you.
them.
3? All 6, right? Let's see if we can use 6 machines. Okay, so one of the advantages of my workflows, you don't have to specify this matrix, parameters and fail fast and like,
This is kind of weird part of GitHub Actions. I understand they probably had some other plans than running tests in parallel, but it seems to me like they figure it out much easier in like Circle CI, where you just say parallel and put the number. I think there's an open issue on GitHub Actions for this. Just specify the parallel runs by number. But until then, we can use workflows.
Until then, yeah. So this does it for you, okay? And we don't need any other parameters. We're not starting, like if we had, for example, a start command, we would use npm start.
Yeah.
Right? But in this case, no. And look again, you see the URL? If anyone's wondering what is this about, click and go.
Yep.
Okay, so add GitHub, and we are split. And we're gonna push and go here. And the actions will start soon, right here. And this workflow, right, the split workflow, it has a couple of jobs, right, already configured inside. So prepare replaces this matrix strategy. It actually computes a matrix of just numbers by text substitution, like, so you can import it in these jobs. We said n equals 6, so now we spawn 6 jobs. They all will install Cypress, but because like after the first run it will be cached, right? Doesn't matter. After that, even if you run them parallel, they all just grab cache. The first run is always the longest. After that, it's much faster.
Yeah.
And then, because I love HTML Mocha awesome reports so much, right?
You
I have a
generate the
job that
reports.
if you generate, it collects, and it will collect like all the screenshots and videos from each,
And I
machine.
believe it also like merges them together, right?
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. That's
So
cool.
I trying to be helpful. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this one, and you see how each test job takes like 40, like the whole container, right? But the test only takes 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, okay, so let's look at to confirm that this is running, installed. See, knows the information
Yeah. Awesome.
and
And
only ran.
wait, did you have the debug opened in there,
No,
or was it? No.
no.
Okay, I
So
was just
this message,
looking.
right? Just like here, the debug module, it prepends everything with that
Yeah.
debug keyword. So, or like the module,
Uh-huh.
right? Because you can have a wildcard. So these are debug outputs, but are only, this is its standard output.
Yeah. Yeah, I see now.
Because
Okay.
I think it's important enough, so you want to see it right away. Like, why am I not running all the tests, right? People would be angry if it did not print it. So it ran correctly. And let's look at the job summary because I like it too. Okay, so these are all artifacts,
Yeah.
right, from each machine, which in this case will be the video. But also my split plugin, when it notices that you're running on GitHub Actions, it actually outputs its summary with details. So
Nice. All right.
this comes from Cypress GitHub Action. This is coming from Cypress Split plugin,
Okay,
right?
I
If you
didn't notice. I thought like no, not sure. I haven't thought about it, but yeah, now it makes sense that the plugin actually prints stuff into there.
yeah,
Cause yeah, all right. So we used
because
six
what
machines
yeah
to run 3 tests, right? So we got some
yeah
machines that run no tests at all.
no, we had 6
We
spec
had
files.
6.
So
Okay, okay. I thought
yeah,
we were still at 3.
no, we had 6 specs, and they finished all, and we can control and let's say run on 3 machines, right? Just to see how it changes. So the way I debug things right now would be, find, actually, why don't we introduce a failing spec, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Right. I don't know. Sci wrap true should not shadow should
Happens to me
be
every day like 4 times.
false. Okay. Fail. Fail. Cannot have any punctuation because it has a special meaning. Okay, so now the actions are running, on 3 machines.
Yep.
Okay.
And they
Which
should
is
run
nice,
faster
right?
because we already cached the Cypress package and
Hopefully,
everything. Hopefully,
hopefully,
yeah.
it's hard. I will say this: it's hard to see a difference on such a small, test run. Like if it's 10 seconds, then you're gonna be dominated by, everything around it, right? How fast the container, how fast the video is encoding, right? In this case, it's actually not going to be faster because we use only 3 machines, so they each should run 2 specs, so 20 seconds, right? But whatever.
Yeah, we
But
got
actually,
one we
yeah,
got one question. I think you already answered it, but I it might be valuable to back up into and show it one more time for just a second.
Yeah, go
So
ahead. Yeah, while
how
you're
do
waiting.
you
Yeah.
basically set up an environment variable into GitHub Action? So there's this
Right.
env option, and but not sure if we shown how to use that with the workflow, or it doesn't really matter.
Okay, so let's
Forgot
see.
about
And
that. Sorry.
so if you want to debug, the workflows allow you to pass the debug parameter,
Mm-hmm.
so that's already built in. For anything else, right? I should document it. This is something I should document.
Mm-hmm.
So these are definitions of inputs that each workflow allows, which
Oh,
exactly
okay.
like GitHub Action, like Cypress Action allows. And most of them, like N, yes, this is how many machines. But everything else is like standard Cypress stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like set Cypress environment variables.
So this would be
Um,
exactly the same as with
the same,
GitHub Action from Cypress. It
yes.
sort of passes
So
it down through the
yeah,
tree.
pretty much everything. The
Mm-hmm.
only additional things that like N, like my debug,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Mocha awesome merge command. Um, so just a little bit of
Yeah,
extras,
yeah.
but env is the same.
All right.
Okay, so you can see that here, each machine executed, and I give timings for each spec. So my suggestion is that look at the spec duration and see if there is a spec, and this usually is like prettier like this.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't be zoomed in. Usually, if your specs are approximately the same duration, then when you split it statically, it's gonna finish like approximately the same time, so fine. But if you find a spec that's like takes 10 minutes and everything else takes 1 minute, you probably want to split that spec so it doesn't dominate, right, the whole running time. So just keep your specs approximately the same duration, and then everything is gonna be fine. Okay, so we had a failure.
Yeah, let's
Which
examine the failure.
Okay, so we can see that Cypress tells us one test has failed. Cypress split tells you which spec has failed,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you don't have to guess. You can see it right away. And you know what I like about this, Philip? So normal spec 10 seconds, and this one takes 14. Why do you think it takes 14 seconds?
Well, because of the 4 seconds, right?
Yeah, default command
I
timeout. Okay,
always
so
love to tell
yeah,
the story on my workshops when like how did the 4 seconds became to be, and
yeah,
it's amazing story. Like 3 felt like too little of a time, 5 felt like too much, so we
yeah.
settled on 4. That's amazing. Like the scientific method behind that.
And it was the right decision, right? If you
Yeah,
think.
I think it
Okay,
was. I think it was.
so look at this. So Cypress split chunk 2 out of 3, right? So this would be this one, right? 2 out of 3. So we can click on the results, download the zip, unzip it, and it's right here. And there is a screenshot. Okay, so
All
this
right.
is our screenshot
Mm-hmm.
and video, and we know which spec it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know, yeah, like actually, which one was it? Spec B. So we can look at the video. The GitHub actions are not that powerful, so sometimes you might not get an accurate screenshot when it fails
Mm-hmm.
because it's still like it finished the video before it actually rendered it. Let's see if it's
There's this really nice setting on
yeah,
for Cypress dashboard when you have video recording on. You have the option
yeah.
to sort of not upload the video if the test has passed. So is there something like that in this one? I don't think that option applies to this plugin, right?
No,
But
but I can tell you if you go to my Cypress search,
oh, I
how
just
to
remembered you wrote about this recently, right? Because there's a thing where you
yeah,
can just
delete.
hook into the after test or something.
Yes,
Yeah,
basically I
yeah.
have either a video or something Yeah, like delete Cypress videos for passing specs.
Yes. That's what I
I, I,
meant.
I actually suggest you not do that because when something fails, you want to see how it looked when it passed. So to me, it's like don't keep them forever. Keep them for a week, right? And let your CI like clean it up automatically. Like GitLab has a very good option, like keep artifacts for a week, but don't delete them right away because then you're like, how did it work? Okay, so we debugged this. This is good. Here's one more trick. If you find yourself that the video's cut off when you need it the most, right? You can add after each hook, and you can just say wait for like, I don't know, 5 seconds, and you put it in your support file. And what this does, your after each hooks, they run even if the test fails, right? Like if a browser crashes, that's fine, right? You're not going to get anything. But if a test fails, the after each still runs. And this wait kind of lets the browser catch up, render, and the video will render the last frames, including the failure. Okay.
All right. So you sort of wrap it inside a condition, right? So if a test has failed, or you do that nevertheless?
Forever. Like who cares, right? Like if a test finished 5 extra seconds of like video, I mean, you're not doing anything, right? So the video will be encoded really nicely because it doesn't have any changes, right? If your application is not like doing animations. So by default, if a test has failed, it's not doing anything. So the video will be like this 5 seconds will be very small. But if the video failed, you will have nice video that caught up and shows you the last state of things. Okay. So this is what we use to make sure that when we fail, we give a browser a chance to catch up and show.
But you mentioned you have like 700 tests, and you add 5 seconds to every test.
Okay, Philip. Let's talk. Let's talk mathematics. Let's talk mathematics.
All right. I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm gonna open calculator.
Oh, okay,
right?
let's
this,
do that.
Let's do this, right? So let's say 5 seconds times, let's say 1,000 tests, right? Let's be generous, right? It's 5,000 seconds, right? We can round it up, right? And let's say it's 6,000, right? Which is what?
That's 100 minutes, right?
Yeah, let's say 100 minutes. Okay. So 100 minutes of video, right? Like, let's be generous. Let's say 100 megabytes. Okay.
All right.
So 100 megabytes to upload. I mean, 100 megabytes, like, it's like 1 minute YouTube video.
Yeah,
right?
All right, but I didn't mean that. I mean like the test execution, 100 minutes into full test execution. Like that's not nothing, right?
Okay, so 1 extra minute, because if it's like 1,000 tests, I would probably split them at least 10 machines, right? So in reality, right, it's like 1 minute of extra time.
If you were to split it into, split it into 10 machines, then that would be 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, okay, 10 minutes.
Okay.
No, that doesn't. Okay, so in that case, we need something more. I already lost what I was trying to say.
Sorry.
Here's my point. Here's my point. I never sit and wait, right, for all tests to run, right? If I need to run over tests, they run nightly, they run as cron job, right? I never sit around like, okay, I need to be as fast as possible to run all the tests, because then I lost, right? So if I'm working on the feature, I run only, the tests that relate to that feature, and I use tags, change specs, you name it, all sorts of detection strategies, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, but that's interesting. That's kind of touches on the topic we discussed before we hit live about how you actually structure what you do and how how does it work at Mercari? Because I would imagine if you want to release a new feature, then you would go to push the new feature, and then all your tests run, and you're just sort of waiting for that to pass, and so you can release, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, you are waiting for your tests. So you don't run
No,
all
no,
of the
but
tests, right? You run only
right,
a
right.
subset. Okay.
Exactly. Yes. So you can run maybe a big subset, but you can also control the number of machines, right? In our pull request, you can specify how many machines to use, if you want to tag. And by default, we just run wherever we detect change in your spec files, right? Because you probably, but so basically, we never have to run all the tests, and we can, instead of shaving the 5 seconds, because if there is an error in both tests that you run and you don't receive any meaningful actionable information when it fails, why it failed, then this is the expensive part,
This is
right?
the yeah.
This is your time and trying to rerun the test, right? And I'll tell you something else, right? So the human time is a lot more expensive than the machines. So storage, extra CI machine to throw it at it, right? Doesn't matter at all, right?
Yeah,
It's
I
the
agree with that,
humans.
and I'm really glad you're pointing that out, because talking about whether this or that framework is faster and stuff like that. You mentioned that in one of your
Yeah,
webinars as well, right? That's like focusing on not the right part, right?
yeah,
Because exactly as you said, the human time is the most expensive time.
yeah,
One developer is going to cost you much more than whatever service you'll buy, whether that is GitHub Actions or Dashboard or
yeah.
Coveralls or whatever, right? And yeah, like focusing on this time is important. I get your point now. Like I'm sort of more comfortable now with the after each hook.
Yeah.
Although 5 seconds still feels like a lot.
I
I would probably
It depends how.
try a little less and see where that brings me.
Just think about how long your tests are, right? So for our like tests at Mercari, the average, which I kind of show in this presentation. So this is a couple of talks I gave over the years about how we run and write, and like this tells you about pull requests and how we select the tests and so on. Our average spec
You should,
duration is about like
by the way,
1 minute
sorry, you should send that link into the chat for the folks
through
to click
YouTube.
on
Yeah,
it. Yeah. But sorry, continue.
right. So all I'm saying is that our specs, right, or our tests, we usually have like 1 to maybe 3 tests per spec, are between 1 and 2 minutes, right? Because the time is not. Oh, jeez. Again, every test run is great, but the time is not dominated by how fast you can click. The
Yeah.
time of a task is dominated by how fast does the page load, how fast can you interact, how fast does it react to you clicking a button and then it like doing something on the back and then returning, hey, new screen and everything. So every test run probably will be exactly the same in running the full end-to-end test, at least in my experience on my freaking online marketplace. What really distinguishes the test runners is if something goes wrong, how fast can I debug this? And not, okay, I'm going to debug this test, so I'm going to turn this special mode and run it locally and get the trace of everything, and then I can debug it. No. How fast can you debug from what the CI gave you by default? Not rerunning the test, because you might not catch the same problem, right? But like, here's all the information we collected. It probably added some overhead. That's fine. But once you look at that, you're like, yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly, and that also touches on another important aspect of when you write your tests, is that you want to make them readable and easy to navigate through, right? Because that's something I feel like is kind of overlooked, especially like when when there's the debate, the never-ending debate on page objects. What I have like the most concern about is like is the fact that you might end up with such anxiety of splitting everything to its own box so that you don't repeat a line of code like ever. That when you want to debug one simple test, you might end up opening like 6 or 7 files,
Yeah.
which is not the best debugging experience. And again, it's going to cost you, but not on the CI, but in your salary.
Development. Yeah. Philip, you should write like maybe a blog post, like something meaningful about this. How about that? How you organize your project, how you think about
Yeah, I think I will.
Promise? You
Yeah,
better.
I promise. In fact, I'm halfway done already as we speak.
Halfway done.
Yeah.
I'll
Gleb knows
start with
because
the
I'm writing a
conclusion.
blog about organizing a big project, and I'm really looking forward to your review of that, because I probably have some weird ideas there. You know, like don't add after each with 5-second
Oh.
wait after your tests.
Like we did talk about this before, right? I did write a blog post with 2 simple tricks to make your tests more readable, right? We can briefly
yeah.
look at that before we wrap up, right? And also to everyone watching, please ask questions because we want to like answer all of them, right? Before we finish.
Yeah, we
What do you
actually
think?
got a couple of questions while you
Oh,
were
do you want to?
showing Cypress split, and
Yeah.
it was there were a couple of questions regarding the Cucumber framework, and I think that's one of the topics that also needs some some opinion from you, Gleb. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Pros and cons. Go ahead.
I love 3 things in this life: monorepos, page objects, and Cucumber. And the thing that I like or love about all 3 is that I never have to use them. Right?
All right.
Okay. So my personal opinion, right? You can throw it away, ignore me completely, right? Is that I've never seen a Cucumber test written where it doesn't become an obstacle to you understanding what's happening, right? And especially when we hired at Mercari, we would interview people and we would say, okay, write any type of tests, come back, show it to us. We'll ask questions, right? And what we would do, let's say you're writing tests to do MVC. You pick, like, we don't pick a project for you. You pick whatever best showcases your skills. Every candidate who came with Cucumber syntax, right? Like, all with if, thens, so on. We usually then would ask every candidate to change the test a little bit, right? Imagine, oh, you're checking 3 objects, check 2, and then add a check for some classes present in the middle one, like completed. So we would ask that every candidate who came with this Cucumber abstraction on top of a test commands was struggling, right? They're like, oh, wait, I now have to use something that doesn't really match cleanly into the Cucumber syntax. So I have to modify code here and this step there. And they just like the complexity becomes overwhelming. If you use standard commands, right? You're like, oh yeah, should have class completed. Like you literally add one more thing, like in your spec. It was such a weird experience where like, oh yeah, Cucumber is just another way to write tests. But it becomes this layer that becomes a project of its own.
Yeah.
The same opinion kind of applies to page objects, right? And I promise, I actually found a very good example of page objects in Cypress where I think it doesn't help. I will write a blog post too.
All right.
So it's not going to be how to do it. I'm just going to be like, I think if you're doing this, you probably want to rethink this. Right.
I wanted to ask you one thing about the Cucumber, because it like you sort of showed that it doesn't really solve the problem of writing tests. That's already solved by Cypress syntax anyway, right? Because it's readable. but what I think why there's a popularity of that, well, there are actually two reasons. One, the behavior in BDD, you focus on behavior,
Yeah.
which you should anyway. But it's good that this BDD became a thing and we started focusing on the behavior. But the other thing I think it's that's important about Cucumber that people like about that
Yeah.
is that you can sort of show your work to someone. You can sort of export that and have the same standard for writing test cases and creating those scenarios somewhere else, then apply that to
Yeah.
test automation, then write a report of how that test automation went. And this kind of brings me like, yeah, go ahead, react on that, and then I have a suggestion of how we can collaborate, because I have an idea.
For me, the best report of what the test is doing, honestly, especially to like everyone outside, right, the stakeholders on the project that are not coding it up, is the video, because it literally shows your application in action. There is a second argument where by being so uniform, it allows non-developers to write effective tests, which I don't agree with, because I think to write an effective test, you sometimes have to go deeper into the system. For example, in Cypress, you click on a button and it does something like adds a record to the database. Well, you have to make an API request to check if that record is there and it's correct. Well, good luck,
Adding
right,
that
to
to the
your
cucumber, yeah.
non, yeah, like your product manager will say, oh yeah, I need to make API request and check what it really was added before I continue with the rest of the test. Like,
Yeah.
no, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Like, it allows you to go much deeper and to integrate your test actually within the application, instead of just sort of writing an automation script that will just
yeah,
do steps on your application. Which I think this approach, this automation mindset, I think it's sort of very popular, and I think there's a reason why that is popular, where it sort of comes from the, not sure if left or right or which side it comes from, but it's sort of, hey, so this is like the behavior, this is a scenario I would click, and let's now write a script that would do that. And I think this is something that also confuses many people that start using Cypress, because they want to like emulate a behavior of a real user without actually like taking a look into that application itself. And like, to be honest, Cypress is probably not the best tool for like a black box approach. You kind of want to see at least a little bit, like the API thing, right? At least a little bit you want
yeah.
to look into what's going on with your application.
I I've done talks about Cypress API and like the chain command and like passing things forward. The way I like it is that if you write, I think, in my opinion, if you write instructions to the user first on a piece of paper, visit the page, it should have two elements. The button submit should be visible. Click on it. It should go to another location, which is like dot dot dot. It really maps very nicely to Cypress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you write something like, go to the page, find the element that has the username by the ID. Well, wait a minute, right? Now, right? And store it in a variable, and then 2 screens later, enter that ID somewhere else. Well, it's just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I think it's hard to argue without examples, right? Concrete examples.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. Like, but I think you dropped some truth bombs here. So I think hopefully that helps the community. I also thought about the reporting. I said that maybe we should collaborate on something, and and uh, and I had a suggestion. So I'm currently working on a very like small plugin utility. I can actually show you what that is. I just have like a little screenshot.
Philip, is this going to be plugin number 2 for you?
Yes, that's
First
going to
API,
be plugin
That
number
was
2.
that was a hit. Now it's gonna be the second.
This one is not going to be such a hit. I think so, but it is a utility that sort of helped me in my work. So here it is, and what it does is it adds a new command called cy step, and it's basically
Yeah.
the exact same thing as cy log with just a couple of capabilities. I wrote a blog about this very, I think like 2 years ago or something like that, but I decided to make it a plugin. Basically, if you use the cy step, it's just another command in your command chain, and it will add this this log into your timeline, and it will automatically number it. So if you have like navigate to blog section, open the latest blog post, etc., and then if there's an error, it will append the whole scenario into the error. I found it really useful because when the test stopped and it failed, it would print out this information, and I would have it inside the screenshot. So this would give me the exact point where that test has failed, what it was trying to do. And the collaboration thing, I asked you about the find specs utility. I forgot the name.
Yeah.
It would be really nice if I could use that for finding all the steps and all the it blocks, and then sort of generate the result and print it on a piece of paper and bring it to my product manager or something like that. Basically solving the visibility problem, because I worked at one company so far at Slido, and we had a really good culture, and no one was standing over my head trying to figure out what I'm doing. But I don't know that sometimes you need some sort of transparency, even if into testers' work, and they need to report what they have tested. And I think like that's kind of reason why people use Cucumber, and I try to propose my own solution for that. So
I someone asked like if we use like Cucumber day to day. I never had an honor of using it day to day, only in my salads. But
yeah. No, not even in my salads, to be honest.
okay, I was exploring exactly the same idea, right? Here's my suggestion, and I see it. This was born because at work, people would like open pull requests where they would be, good, programmer citizen, and they would actually comment on what the steps are doing, which is like your size step idea, right? And to me, this is good, right? Like you explain, kind of what's supposed to. But here's a suggestion: use either Philips size step plugin, or just literally replace all the comments with sci logs. And if you use Markdown, right, it will be in bold, like right here, enter user information.
Oh,
so
sorry, I just started sharing your screen. I didn't realize you were sharing, but
sorry
but yeah,
about that.
now we're showing. We see that now. Sorry.
Yeah. So you see the comment, enter user information, transitions, sort by price. Like these are all good comments. But if a test fails or you watch a video, you have no idea, but this is what you're supposed to be doing. So just put them in scilog command and make it bold using Markdown. And then if you have a screenshot, you clearly see transition. And one step better. So I have a plugin called Cypress log to torn, which just literally overrides scilog command. So all these commands, you see the screenshot, transition to the inventory, enter user information, they automatically get forwarded to your terminal output, right? So you can see where the test is, like what is it doing right now, where it failed, like roughly. And when you look at screenshots, like, okay, this is where like it failed. And I actually improved this thing because the Cypress log to term can give you the current subject, right? So all sorts of crazy things that you can do to actually output things like prices low to high, easily from the page to a terminal, right? And imagine you generate some kind of JSON, like you could actually like parse this anyway, um, generate like a breadcrumbs
Mm-hmm.
of your test. And the second tip for making your tests better is to use SciSpark. So um, I used to work with Thorsten at Cypress. He is a superstar. He wrote Spark,
Mm-hmm.
which is a sorting library for chai. And I wrote SciSpark that wraps around it and just adds nothing pretty much, right? It's all him. So basically, the problem that I see in a lot of tests, people have to use a lot of expectations or a lot of shoulds
Mm-hmm.
just to check like this property, that property. Don't even get me started on like nested objects because you can't really.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what do we do, right? We bring plugin size Spark and you import this little function. So you don't have to replace anything, right? You can just wrap your expected value with Spark. And then you can have this one giant object. Okay, so it's inside should, and then you can confirm deeply nested object in a single shot.
And it also does
Okay,
like partial comparison, so you don't need to have like the exact thing, but
right.
just list out the things you want to test.
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's like deep include, not deep equals. You
yeah,
only list properties you want to check. And the coolest thing, this is how it looks in your command log, right?
yeah.
It actually tells you the path to each property and if it like passed or not. Like, and if one property passed, I mean, or like all properties are matching or passing and one is wrong, it will tell you everything that's passing in green and in red only that one. So you know the full picture, like if it failed everything or just one. And you can use your own predicates, right? And
Yep.
there are built-in predicates. Like I don't know the value, but I know it's a number. Perfect. I don't know the status code. I just know it has to be like one of those 200,
Yeah.
right? Regular expressions, one of like types, you name it, and it's all very beautiful command log. Just so
We're talking
much better
about
experience.
CY Spock, and Murat has entered the chat. So I think if you
He
say
heard it,
CY Spock, he appears. Hi, Murat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, like I
I love
like
CY Spock. I actually use it in my API workshop.
yeah,
Because if you get a response from server and you want to test the response body,
yeah,
and you're just interested in some parts, or the server actually generates a UID which you just
yeah,
cannot know in advance, then using such tool is so great. And
yeah.
just wanted to know, like, how does it behave if you have multiple failures? Will it stop at the first one, or will it list all of the failures? Because I believe someone asked about this and on the Discord server just recently.
You know, I probably it will list all the failures,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I will not, I will not rest today until I add an example to my SciSpark README
All right.
because I think, right, because I have to consult it myself a lot of times. I do think it will, but okay, I'll see if I can confirm it for you, and
Yeah.
I'll put it in a SciSpark README file.
All right. We'll take your word for it. Share it in the Discord channel afterwards. I think some people might jump in there after this stream and be curious about that. Or it's just me, drop it there for me.
I dropped it in the YouTube comments so everyone can
Ah,
find it.
yeah. Okay, that's even better. Um,
Oh, did we cover everything, Philip, today?
uh, I don't think we covered everything because like this would be a 24-hour live stream. Not sure if you're up to that. I still have like 10 hours until I have to bring my kids to school. It's
It's
like
like
45-minute trip, and then we can continue. We can take it from there.
so it's like a Liman of Cypress webinars, right?
Yeah,
Liman
yeah,
racing,
yeah.
24 hours. Uh,
Yeah,
but
we'll
maybe
probably do that some other day.
yes. I bet if we do that, then about hour 20 will be like, cucumber is the best thing ever. Why?
Yeah, we got a question if we have ever tried that in like a real work. I have tried that. I still stand by what I said. I don't think again, like every time you want to write a new test, you need to add a step. But yeah, I think we kind of covered that. Let me just scroll through the questions and see if there's
Yeah,
anything else. How are you with time? Do you still have
I
time,
have a
or you
couple.
need to run?
No, I have a couple more minutes, like 10 minutes
Oh, you got
before I
like
have
10
to.
minutes. Okay.
10,
So
10 minutes is plenty.
so this is your last chance, folks. Try to post your question, and hopefully, with the 10 or 15-second delay we have on this chat, we can answer that. Gleb, feel free to scroll through the questions if you spot anything that's interesting and you want to answer.
Okay, so I see there is solid Cypress dashboard. I actually expressed my opinion about solid dashboard. So, like I said, I consider myself like a big part of Cypress, the test runner, all the plugins, CI integration, documentation. Like the ambassador program is something I started with Magnolia, right? Because I thought it's right.
Thank you for that. By the way.
Yeah, well, everyone is very welcome, right? So if you look at Solid Dashboard, that's a completely different approach. But one person who started it, right, said, okay, I see this dashboard, people pay for it, I'll recreate my own clone, like clearly by observing, and it's not fully open source. It's like some things are just like Docker image, like the orchestrator API. And if you use Cypress dashboard, you can just switch to mine and pay me. And
Yeah.
he has never contributed back to test runner. I always thought it's a good trade-off. Build a company around test dashboard for people who really use Cypress, and then put at least part of the money back into the development of test runner, because we don't want to happen what happened with a lot of good open source projects where if there is no company behind it, it kind of dies, right? Like
Yeah.
so, and like Cypress is I would say complex project, right? It requires a lot of developer time. It's not like 5 minutes here or there at night, like my plugins, right? And then it will be sustained. No, like so I thought it's a good idea, but someone coming in and saying, "Oh, I see this particular piece of a puzzle, and I'm just gonna, divert a little bit of money my way," right? I think, yeah, you can do it. I don't even have problems with our services, because you can actually have Cypress results, right, on Perfecto, on AWS dashboard, right, browser stack,
Yeah,
right.
there are many solutions out there. Yeah.
It's fine, right, but they're separate things, and they never claim, one for one substitution, be smarter, right. So
Yeah,
I'm down.
I think I know what you mean. Like Cypress is built. The Cypress Runner is built as an open source solution, and it has
Yeah,
always been built with the open source community in mind, right? The fact that
yeah,
you can add your own plugins, you can create your custom commands. It's basically like you can plug it anywhere. So it has never been forbidden to do something
yeah,
like you do with the Cypress Split plugin, and it's actually and in the end, I think it's actually going to be valuable, because the open source community sort of moves like one organism, and it
yeah,
brings a lot of good ideas together. And then I honestly think like your contribution can improve the Cypress dashboard as well in the end, as many of your ideas have, as you mentioned, right, with the component testing and API testing. I know there was probably like some bitterness about it. Hopefully not, but in the end, I feel like it is sort of a win for everyone when the community comes together and contributes. Um,
Yes.
Yeah, with the sorry Cypress, it feels like the story is a little bit different. It's sort of like diversion into, hey, let's not support his project. Let's actually support me.
Yeah,
And
it's very
I get
targeted.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
and like you cannot ban anyone, you cannot forbid anyone to do anything,
Mhm.
right? But it's your decision, right? And it's your decision as a company, right? Like you don't run lots of tests. Like no offense to anyone who loves to write tests, but like you don't run a lot of tests, right? For your own. Oh, I can, right? Look at my 1,000 tests for my personal something, right?
Mhm.
Usually, if you do a lot of end-to-end testing and you need artifacts and everything, it's part of a company business, right? And at this point, it's a business decision, right? And whatever you pay for the dashboard or whatever service, UCI, everything, it's not coming out of your project or like pocket, sorry, right? Like out of your
Mhm.
pocket, right? As a developer. So then you think about put yourself in other developers' shoes, right? And for example, right, someone has documentation, right? And then you say, okay, I'm going to clone your documentation. I know you have ads. I'm going to clone your documentation and I'm going to put my ads. And I will ask people, hey, go to sorry docs, right, .io. Same docs, right? But
Yeah.
my ads. It's exactly the same thing,
Mhm.
right? Like,
I think
so.
that's a good demonstration of that principle.
Mm.
All right then. Should we wrap this up today?
Um, just I see a couple of questions, right? So I see someone ask like, can you intercept in Cypress WebSockets?
Mm-hmm.
Find on Cypress. I did some experiments. It's not built in, right?
Yeah.
So it will require, right? So I have a blog post. It's not easy. Uh,
I
Murat
think
is asking. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I had one blog post about this as well on my blog. It's quite old, so it's not
Yeah,
probably not really up to date. But basically, when you work with WebSockets, you don't really need to always focus on the WebSocket communication, but you can focus on the result of that WebSocket. So, for example, if you have a chat application that communicates, usually
yeah,
when a message is sent and it appears somewhere, that appearing of the message usually represents
yeah,
some state. So instead, you can look into the state if you're using React, then that's probably like Redux or something like that, and you can take a look into there. I have dealt with this in the past as well when I was trying to do
because
some sort
Slido,
of
right?
in Slido when I was trying to do
Yeah.
some sort of negative testing where we would
Okay.
do some sort of action through API and we were hoping that something does not switch incorrectly. So that was
Yeah.
sort of, we couldn't see any change on the UI unless it happened, right?
Yeah.
So that way we looked into the storage to see the change happen in the storage. And Cypress retriability can make that so easy because you
Yeah.
can just retry
Exactly.
and look into the storage. And if nothing, and if a thing changes that you are waiting for, then
Yeah.
you check your UI and hope that the application didn't do what it's not expected to do. Okay, now double negative here or triple, I don't know. But yeah, basically you can take a look at the result. That's kind of my point here.
Yeah. So another thing Murat is asking, I use Cypress Map plugin a
Mm-hmm.
lot because Cypress version 12 introduced queries, right? And I
Yeah.
immediately wrote a whole bunch of queries. And if you're not using them, you literally are not using Cypress version 12, right? It's incredible what you can do, and it's incredible how more reliable your test will be,
Mm-hmm.
because all of a sudden the whole thing retries, but you just have to avoid like side-then. And so to avoid it, I have all these extra helper methods that allow you to like get elements, get the text, splice it up, right? Find, strings that are like prices, extract the prices, compute the maximum, like all these, all retriable, and so on. So Murat is asking if I will have a course on it. It's already part of my Cypress plugins course, right? There are a bunch of lessons. He just cannot get enough. Philip, right? It's obsession.
Yeah,
Like Cypress Map is so good, you cannot have enough lessons on it.
yeah, exactly. So go ahead and everyone take a look into the plugin and also into the plugin
Yeah.
course. Again, it's such a cool thing that you built your course around your own plugins. Like that's
I have a
definitely
couple of
goals.
extras. It's not just me. It's also Dmitry Kovalenko, with whom I had the privilege to work at
Yeah.
Cypress. His Cypress Real events is
Yep.
incredible.
It's
I
probably like one
cannot
of the
believe.
most downloaded, right?
Yes, yeah, it's so good and it works. And I cannot believe it's not part of a core API yet,
Hmm?
right? Like it has to be. It should have been 2 years ago. Part of anyway. I mean, Sci-Hover. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah.
uh, anyway, you can check out the plugins, and if you have questions about our plugins, I can always add lessons because I love adding lessons there.
Yeah, you've been producing those videos like a machine. I think there was one time in the past where when I was trying to keep up with you because you had like one blog post per week. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do one blog post per week, and then you had two, and I thought, well, maybe I could keep this up, and then you just went to 111, and yeah,
It, it
you're my actually like documentation number two. Sorry, docs. That's for me.
it comes in waves. It comes in waves, but like all this, right? Like required tags,
Mhm.
right? Checking tables. It's because we hit these problems at Mercari US, and I
Yeah,
want to explain it in a way that everyone can understand without all this extra complexity around it. So by kind of extracting it to a plugin or a project and writing blog post, boom, when the whole team knows and it becomes really
yeah. I
easy.
think that's kind of like really important part of the whole contribution to the either like on the blog or with a plugin to have that stream of problems coming at you
Yeah.
so you can solve them and then write blog post about that. um, my blogging has definitely slowed down since I'm not in Slido, so I need
Well,
to step up my game here.
if you need a stream of problems, right? Try using Cucumber for your day to day, and then like, ooh, 1,000 blog posts,
Well, I
right?
got 99 problems, but a
Yeah.
cucumber ain't one, so hopefully, I don't know
Okay.
what awaits me in the future if I'm forced. Like honestly, I was thinking of writing that blog post, like giving the like a simple setup instructions on my blog, so that I
Yeah.
can at least like uh, direct people to that blog post, because I like don't really like to be dismissive, because
Yeah.
sometimes if you just have it, if you just use it at work, you're required to use that, then you're kind of stuck, and my answer like, hey, don't use it, is not really helpful. So I think I may in future write about that. The setup is kind of clunky, and I think I can totally see how like just
Yeah.
going through that can be a problem of its own, and then if you need to do anything extra, then there's that. And I would
TypeScript.
probably then I would probably go ahead and write my thoughts on that, and how maybe you can simplify that with just like not using it. I don't know.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. You hear the same questions again and again. You're like, okay, maybe it requires looking, setting up a project, explaining in a blog post. That's a perfect way to pick a topic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah.
Okay, Philip, as always, it was a pleasure. I really appreciate you kind of inviting me to talk about Split and other plugins.
My pleasure,
It's been fun.
Gleb. It has been fun for me as well. Thank you for showing us the plugin and sharing the ideas. To everyone still watching, we still got an audience. That's great. I'm going to have another stream on Thursday, and I'm going to meet with Mark Noonan, who is one of my favorite people. He's such a nice guy. And we're going to be hacking into Cypress. So we're going to take the fact that Cypress runs in a browser and just going to mess around with that. And it's going to be quirky. It's going to be funny. So I think you might enjoy that. So just in 2 days, exactly the same time. I'm doing 2 streams today, like this week. So that's kind of unusual, but the dates kind of collided. So yeah, come join us. You can find the info on my channel if you want to like wait or be notified on when we go live. You can do that. So yeah, feel free to join us. So thanks again, Gleb. Again, this
Thanks,
was so much
everyone.
fun. Thanks for sharing everything. And yeah, see you everyone. Bye bye.